Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhammad Abdullah. On behalf of IslamiCity, welcome. Again, we're here commemorating the first 10 days of Muharram. And we have with us Dr. Aslam Abdullah, who is taking us on this journey through these 10 days and discussing various aspects of Muharram. And today we'll be talking about uh, how Muharram is an enduring part of Muslim history. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Aslam. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And I noticed that there is something missing today. And that is, inshallah, we will talk about this enduring and lasting experience and lasting memory of this particular month in the Muslim psyche.
Right.
Could you play the ayah of the Quran from Surah At-Tawbah? That is
Yes.
33. Yes.
إن عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها أربعة حرم ذلك الدين القيم فلا تظلموا فيهن أنفسكم وقاتلوا المشركين كافة كما يقاتلونكم كافة واعلموا أن الله مع المتقين.
Lo, the number of the months with Allah is 12 months by Allah's ordinance in the day that He created the heavens and the earth. 4 of them are sacred, that is right religion. So wrong not yourselves in them, and wage war on all the idolaters as they are waging war on all of you. And know that Allah is with those who keep their duty unto Him.
So, as this ayah of Surah At-Tawbah explains that from the eternity, at the beginning of the humanity, the numbers of months have been 12 against the practice of pagan Arabs and also many Jewish tribes who used to add one more month in order to reconcile the lunar with the Georgian or the solar calendar. So after every 3 years, they would add a new month. And that month would basically change the distribution of months once again. And it is in this particular context that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning this 12 months of the year. Now, Muharram does not only begins a new year, and it is not just a month to celebrate the beginning of a new, uh, calendar. In the Muslim psyche, it refers to a very revolutionary idea that Muslims must implement in their everyday life and in their society, regardless where they are or whether they are Shias or they are Sunnis. And that is a very simple idea, but a very difficult idea to practice. And that idea is that life is sacred. But when it comes to defend the purpose of life, then the purpose of life becomes more important than life itself. As we saw yesterday, that was the principle that many of the almost all religions propounded, and all religions believed that martyrdom is in fact is grounded in that idea. But here, this whole month is dedicated to that idea, to live that idea, and to make it part of one's life. So this is something very important that we see, that Muslims trace their month or their new calendar with that concept, not with the concept of what the Georgians or the Julian calendars have given, or not what the pagan Arabs have done, because as we have already seen that even in pagan Arabia, the names of month were different. And what is also very significant, it gives another related ideas to Muslims, that this month, together with three other months, that is Rajab, Ziqad, and Zilhajj, should prepare Muslims to find ultimate peace in their environment and in their world. So these were the beginning months. These were the months that are primarily there to help them understand the significance of peace. Why? A third idea that also emerged, that whenever a large assembly of people take, whenever the security and the safety of people is involved, as it is the case in the month of Ziqad and Zihaj and Muharram, when the Hujjaj or the pilgrims come to Mecca, or in Rajab, when the people who used to perform Umrah in the pre-Islamic days would come, their safety and their security must be guaranteed. So we see one major ideas and two sub ideas. The major idea is that one should be prepared to renounce one's comfort and even one's life in order to defend the purpose of life, because the purpose of life would ensure the continuity of humanity in the future and the continuity of the divine guidance in the future. And the subsequent ideas is that peace is the essence, and that one must work for, and the people's interest and people's security and safety must be taken into consideration. So these three ideas would always remain part of Muslim psyche, and the way they unfolded in the month of Muharram would always refresh them and would always inspire them to make those ideals greater in their lifetime and in their conceptual understanding of Islam as well.
So another way to look at it is that it's not just a matter of counting, like
Indeed,
other calendars or a time. Yes, we're just counting. There's a purpose and a mission behind each one of these months, and looking at it in a much larger context than just counting the days and months.
indeed.
Right.
It is not that the names were, uh, made up for the kings or for any deities. It is for concepts that are relevant for humanity as a whole.
Right. So let's get into one of the most tragic parts, that is part of the history of Muharram, which is the martyrdom of Imam Hussain. Would you like to shed some light on this?
I think yeah, absolutely we should focus it in detail, and also tomorrow also. But if you allow me, can we go back to Hijra
Yes.
momentarily, so that we can
Okay.
lay the foundation of this
Sure.
martyrdom? Yes. So what happened is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated to Medina in the first of Rabiul Awwal, from the time or from the year we trace the beginning of the Hijra calendar. The Hijra, of course, took place in Rabiul Awwal, as is narrated by many people, but we count it from the beginning of that year, that is from the Muharram. So that is something that we have to understand. But what interestingly happened is that the idea of that migration, what was discussed earlier, a year early, in Mecca, when the people of Medina had come to invite people to go to Medina. And then the Prophet was totally entrenched and totally, was living and was an inhabitant, a respectable citizen of Mecca. I mean, despite all the opposition that was coming, he was respected, and he was had the backing of the tribe, all those things. He had his property, or the place, the grave of his wife, the grave of his uncle. All those kind of emotional attachment was there. Yet the Prophet decided to move away and take a chance in the language that we use, to rely on strangers whom the Prophet had never had any kind of long encounters. Why? So that he could establish a society based on justice and based on the idea of peace and unity. The tribes were fighting against each other. Tribes were always at odds against each other. And his idea was that this tribalism should not lead to violence, should not lead to conflict. Rather, it should be based on their efforts to create a peaceful environment for justice and for prosperity and for the growth of the community. And the Meccan chiefs were not willing to, give this idea a place in their social thinking. They still believed in the issue of slavery. They still believed in the issue of women's subjugation. They still believe in the issue of racism, and all those ideas, of course. And the Prophet wanted to create, and he thought that with that power elite in Mecca, it is not possible there. Probably not in his lifetime. So he went, and that is what the essence of Hijra is. That an effort to ensure that peace and justice is established on the basis of people's involvement. And as we saw in the earlier ones, that he established the Constitution of Medina, and he basically brought those people together. And one of the things that probably should also be remembered, that the Prophet established the brotherhood and sisterhood of people of Medina and the immigrants who had gone to Medina with him. And there were 150 of such. And what is very interesting, that the leading role in bringing about this unity of the people of immigrant status and what you call the natives of Medina was played by I am skipping the name. One of the aunts of Abdullah ibn Abbas, who in fact invited all the people of Medina as well as the immigrants to her orchard, and asked them to share and exchange their properties with each other so that the immigrants can stand on their own feet. So it is this concept that basically reminds us of Hijra, and it would always be in our psyche, whether we are in the month of Muharram or whether we are in the month of Zilhijj or Zilqa'dah.
Okay, excellent. So the next should we cover the topic of Imam Hussain?
Yes.
In terms
and
of
now,
in terms of the importance of Muharram.
And this is exactly what Imam Hussain basically is to. That yes, the life is important. I mean, he is the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the one who is looked upon by all the people with reverence, with respect. He has resources. People are willing to sacrifice his life in Medina and Mecca. And he is held in high esteem. His views and his opinions are respected by all the people, including those who were the rulers and all those. And all of a sudden, things happen that forces him to take a stand, to make a statement. And what happened was that the one who came after Ali radiallahu ta'ala, claiming to be the caliph of Muslim, decided to nominate his son, who was a controversial figure in his, in his time also. Not that he was someone who was looked after as a role model for people. He was just the son of a ruler. And when he was appointed, and then when he asked Imam Hussain to make the bay'ah and accept his uh, nomination and accept his rule, the dilemma emerged very glaringly in front of Imam Hussain. Should those who believe in the Quran and those who believe in the teachings of the Prophet follow this style of political manipulation and maneuvering, where the rules of guidance of Islam would be set aside, rules of governance will be set aside, or should we basically submit to that idea, or should we take a different stand? Because if you look at the earlier history of the political succession of Muslims, you would find that the prophets, after Prophet Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala, he did not nominate, and Umar radiallahu ta'ala did not nominate his son, and Usman radiallahu ta'ala did not nominate his son, or the people of Medina did not say that the family members of Usman radiallahu ta'ala should be taken into consideration. So it was that kind of dilemma, that kind of question. And he chose the way. Yes.
Yeah. So, what happened to Yazid after the martyrdom of Imam Hussain?
Well, it was a despotic regime, and they tried to suppress the public opinions and public discourse on that issue. They tried to ensure that the voices are muzzled. They tried to ensure that the opposition is imprisoned, as we find that the family of the Imam Hussain, the surviving members of Imam Hussein's family, were put in prison. And in fact, the first Ashura was observed by Imam Hussein's sister in prison, where she talked about to her companions and the co-prisoners on that issue. So, and then certainly, with this huge censorship and with this huge draconian laws to suppress the freedom of expression, and then even the protests, because there were people who protested in Mecca and Medina, and they were dealt severely by PSC. There were people who realized that they made a mistake by not coming out in support of Imam Hussain in Kufa, and they came out wailing and crying about their betrayal. But when they took a political stand against, tried to take a political stand against it, they were brutalized. So the suppression went on, and that established a tradition, and that institutionalized despotism. That institutionalized one person's dictatorship. That institutionalized a political culture that we still find in the Muslim world. And we find that the tradition of scholars at that particular time, there were many, not many, who stood up against Yazid because they were afraid of losing their lives and all those things. So now what happened is that that same culture prevails now. That Muslim polity that initially started with the right of people to choose based on the Quran, as the Quran says that وَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, and وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ, that when you have disputes and conflict of ideas, go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His Messenger, and those who are from amongst you means who are chosen, who have your confidence in running your affairs. And that was not the case that happened at the, in the subsequent centuries of Muslims, even though the rulers played a great role in expanding Islamic empires, in nourishing and nurturing sciences and all those kind of things. But the governance and the polity that Islam and the Quran had envisaged was demolished with that particular act. But Imam Hussein's position remained uh, an example for all of us, because if we look at it, none of us would stand for despotism. None of us would welcome one person's rule, in whether in our homes, in our organizations, in our countries, in our institutions. And the democratization, or the kind of political consensus that Islam wanted to build, is the essence that we all, and Imam Hussein, will always be remembered in that particular context. So the Muharram will always remind Muslims, whether they are Shias, they are Sunnis, that the political authority must have the confidence of people and must not act in violation of the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Right. So there is no difference of opinion among the Shia or Sunni on the history of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. They all agree, that this is what took place.
You see, what happened in the early eras of history, there were scholars who either preferred to remain silent or who did not oppose the decision of Yazid and Muawiyah. And that creates confusion, and that creates a division among the Shias on that. And based on this kind of division, many Shias assume that this entire Sunni population and the Sunni scholarship is against Imam Hussein. How could it be? How could any sensible person that believes in the essence of the Quran take a position against it? Imam Hussein's position that was based on the Quran. In subsequent years, as we find with scholars like Muinuddin Chishti in India, or whether modern scholars like Maulana Abul Kalam Azad or many others, they all have stood on the side of Imam Hussein always. And in fact, the traditions of Muslims taking out the Taziyah in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh is a way to mortalize Imam Hussein's shahadat, though not in the same kind of fervor and same kind of manner that the Shias do. So I think to blame that the entire Sunni world was responsible for the murder of Imam Hussein, in fact, at that particular time, what was responsible for the despotism. And people spoke against despotism. But when these ordinary people are disorganized and have no power, how can they fight an army that was brutal in killing the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's grandson? When they were so merciless, and the ordinary people saw their fate in the same kind of sequence. So I think we live now in a world where Imam Hussein is not only a hero of the Shia, but he is also a hero of the entire Muslim world, who stood up at a time when, and you remember the couplet of Iqbal, Islam zinda hota hai har Karbala ke baad, that Islam, it has become a part of our lingua, that Islam revives after every Karbala. Qatl Hussain asl mein marge Yazid hai. The death and the martyrdom of Imam Hussain is in fact the death of Yazid. Islam zinda hota hai har Karbala ke baad. Who said it? Iqbal. And who is Iqbal? The most popular Urdu poet of the Indian, Pakistan, and Bangladesh subcontinent. So I think now that schism that initially was considered as theological is not valid. That idea that Imam Hussain or Imam Ali are not respected. They are, without believing in the character of Imam Hussain and believing in the character of Imam Ali. We feel that our commitment to the Prophet ﷺ remains incomplete.
So let's end with some advice that you can give, I guess, for Shias and Sunnis, as to how we can come together.
I think one of the things is what you have started is to develop a better understanding of the Shias' understanding of the events and the Sunnis' understanding of the events. That's the first thing. And in that respect, if we could read some books, that's fine. Otherwise, use our common sense and common knowledge that how is it possible that the Muslims who revere Prophet ﷺ and his family, that they are willing to die for that Prophet, they're willing to die their lives for the honor of the Prophet ﷺ, would have that kind of attitude that they would not consider Imam Hussein's martyrdom or Imam Ali's position as a valid position or as a respectable position in the community. So I think that is something that has to be, and the Shias need to understand that it's their love to Imam Hussain and Imam Ali and the family of the Prophet is as intense as their love to them also. Similarly, the Shias have to realize that Hijra was a major concept in the world history. And it was a turning point in the history. And the Hijra was done for the purpose of creating justice and peace in society. And it is the responsibility of both Shias and Sunni to ensure that they stand for justice and peace. The idea of pointing fingers at each other, the idea of cursing and cussing each other, the idea of saying that the Shias are non-Muslims or saying that Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala and Umar or Usman were criminals and were the deviants is not right. It would only heighten the passion and it would create more hatred. And it would not serve any purpose. It would not serve. If Ali radiallahu ta'ala lived under the rule of all those caliphs and accepted the positions of authority, then who are we to point fingers? Yes, you can critique that the political mistakes were made. You can say that there were differences of opinion, but that does not mean that theologically we put down each other and say that one is Muslim and one is not Muslim. And this we have to show openness. We have to admit that we were wrong in certain parts of history in our understanding, and we have to show that in the future we must make an attempt to come together in defense of justice and in defense of peace, in defense of equality, egalitarianism, and liberty. That is the essence of the Quran. And in that respect, we have to again go back to the Quran and make Quran the foundation of our relationship with each other, and not history, and not be the prisoners of history.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there is absolutely no disagreement on the Quran, even as there are some misunderstandings and false assumptions that the Shias do not recognize the Quran the way Sunnis do, and maybe the other way around also. But
now, Brother Alim, you have been asking me questions. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Have you in your life ever seen a Muslim, and by that I mean a Sunni Muslim, who has shown any disrespect to Imam Hussain or Imam Ali?
Yeah, it's not part of our ethos. I mean, they're considered all the same, in terms of and even the tragedy of Imam Hussain is observed, in the deepest sense.
Now, I just wanted to narrate that my late father, who was in India and who was a member of the Jamaat Islami, and was, a spokesperson of Jamaat Islami as far as his writing is concerned, he would always offer the Eid prayers after Ramadan in a Shia mosque. And he would always take me there. And so that idea that, yes, there are people who, for political reason, point fingers at Shia and say that they are not Muslim. But they need to be confronted. They need to be confronted. But the essence is that we have to go back again to the original source of guidance, that is the Quran, and the teachings of the Prophet when it comes to justice, when it comes to peace, when it comes to egalitarianism, when it comes to liberty and equality.
Absolutely. But one thing that is becoming very obvious is that even though we are doing this over a 10-day period, we need to do more interaction
Indeed.
as intrafaith. And as Dr.
Walji.
Walji has so graciously volunteered himself for being available to do these discussions. And inshallah, we'll get other people involved. And the more people talk to each other and question each other in a respectable way, where we can dispel all of these misunderstandings, the better
Indeed.
opportunity we have.
As you said yesterday, that or a day before yesterday, it's a baggage of 1400 years. And if we could just make a little dent and open the doors that we have closed for centuries, so that we could at least see each other as humans, not as enemies, then of course we have served some, taken some steps in a direction that would bring peace within the community.
Absolutely. And at least in our Islamic understanding, we are not going to be questioned as to the ultimate result. Allah
Indeed.
will ask us, what did you do
Indeed.
in this circumstance? Whether the result turned out to be positive or not, that is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at least we will be questioned as to what we did when we knew about this, what
Indeed.
actions we took. So this is a reminder for all of us that we all have to take concrete steps and make sure that we can promote these understandings and dispel all of these myths that we find on both sides, on Shia and Sunni sides.
Yes, yes, indeed, indeed.
Okay. So with that, again, we come to our conclusion. And I'd like to remind everyone that we are doing these sessions every day. We'll be doing this through August 29th, which is Saturday. We're meeting every night between 6:30 and 7. So hopefully you'll be able to join us again tomorrow and subsequent days. If you have any questions, at the bottom of the page where you are listening to this this webinar, there's a comment section. You're welcome to put questions there. And if there are questions, we'll make sure that we answer those questions. So with that, Dr. Aslam, we can conclude with the dua, inshallah.
Thank you very much. May Allah bless you and your team for doing this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our intentions are pure and sincere. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the unity of the Muslim a reality and help us to contribute towards bringing together the various communities and sects that have drifted apart as a result of misunderstanding or lack of understanding of each other. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Thank you very much.